Okay, Steve, welcome to the Hardhat Professional, and thank you for sharing your career history through the article that you wrote for us. So, in that article, you've mentioned some of the points that were important to you, the points that were important and that you've learned early in your career. So, can you take us through them? We're gonna start with communication. You said communication is particularly important for construction professionals when they start out in their career. Can you please elaborate on that one?
Yes, I'll use an example. Your worst nightmare is to get a newly qualified civil engineer allocated to your site for his first real site experience. He arrives full of confidence and cocky as anything, ready to show the whole world, the whole site, how clever he is. So we got a new engineer, and he arrived full of confidence. We were busy and under pressure, and one of the teams needed levels put in for a concrete pour. So I asked him if he knew how to put in levels, and he said no problem, he could do it. So we gave him a level, sent him off to site with 2 assistants, and 2 hours later, when he'd not returned, I went to look for him. And he was still battling to find the site to set the dumpy level up over a peg. He got completely confused between a dumpy level and a theodolite and was too embarrassed to come and ask for help. And that was just a simple example of poor communication. But there's so many others. Delivery drivers don't get proper directions of where you want material delivered and end up tipping it or delivering it in the wrong place or get lost. And then you have to go and spend hours looking for the truck. You know the site, but a newcomer, it can be very confusing, and a few minutes extra explaining, or better still, escorting him to the right place can save hours of driving around looking for him. Signage is also another part of communication. We had a job out at Pola coal washing plant at Emalothenyi, and that was a massive site, and there were 3 different gates to get onto the site. None of them were numbered or clearly marked. So any newcomer to the site had to drive into each gate, speak to the security guard, who often did not know the details of the site, and try and find out where to go. After we discussed it with the project managers and made them aware of the problem, then they put big signs up saying gate 1, 2, and 3, which made it a hell of a lot easier for other people coming to the site. But a simple thing like signage can make life a hell of a lot easier on a construction site.
Thanks. And the next one, I think it has to do with labor. As professionals, you say we have to make sure that labor is, they get paid correct wages, because a lot of unhappiness can result in unnecessary strikes. So can you elaborate on that and give us some examples and on your experience with this point?
Yes, until you've experienced the whole labor force wanting to tear you limb from limb because the wages or the labor-only subcontractor money has not arrived on site when it should have, you don't realize how important it is. You might be sitting at the office and hear, there was a problem with the wages and the guys didn't get paid. Now, when you're on site, and a lot of the construction labor work from month to month, and quite often they run out of money near the end of the month, so they've had to borrow it. So when you've given a commitment that you're going to pay them on 12 o'clock on a Friday, and then you don't, or the money's late and it doesn't arrive, the guys get hell of a upset. And to a certain degree, you've got to sympathize with them, because you expect them to work hard during the week, and your agreement with them is that you will pay them 12 o'clock on a Friday or Thursday, at the end of the month. And when you don't live up to your commitment, then the guys get upset. And there have been a lot of sites where the site staff have been attacked by the labor because they messed up the wages. And you know, people sitting at head office that process the wages, they need to spend time on a site so they understand how important it is to get it right. And quite often when you get it wrong, you've got to be able to speak to the labor and explain to them what the problems are, but try and get it sorted out as quickly as possible. You need to contact head office, find out what the problem was, when the money will be in people's accounts, and then make sure that it's done. But a lot of sites, people have been attacked, vehicles have been damaged, offices have been damaged just because of a silly thing like not getting the wages right. And labor is a key part of a construction site, and making sure you pay them is a key part of having a successful site.
All right, yeah, and the next one, I actually have some experiences, horrible experiences with this one. Check you have the right drawing revisions. Please explain, tell us about your experience, because yes, I've got one or two stories to tell as well in this one.
Yes, I should be interviewing you, not the other way around. But my stories are, you know, somebody's put in charge of the drawing register and in charge of looking after drawings. And that's a key part of a construction site, because invariably you're under pressure on site, and you haven't got time to check everything. And when the clerk or whoever's looking after the drawings issues a drawing, you expecting that to be the right revision. And we've had a few cases where the foreman's been issued the drawing, he's gone out, worked hard, cast the foundations, and then when the time comes to check them, we pick up that he's been using the wrong revision. And on one of the foundations, we were working on one of the gold mines, the stage winder foundation. We cast the whole stage winder foundation, and this was probably about 30 cubes of concrete, and it was in the wrong position because of the wrong revision being used. And luckily we were able to come up, we had a big crane on site, and we were able to lift the whole foundation up and move it over about half a meter to get it into the right position. Otherwise we'd have sat and broken out that foundation, and we probably would have lost about 2 or 3 weeks on that section of the work.
All right, and the next one, get someone to check you if possible. You say again, a simple thing to do, but it's not done, it can cause problems. Tell us more.
Yes, another example I had, earlier on in my career, we needed to build a pedestrian bridge over a road. It was a simple galvanized steel structure with 2 foundations on either side of the road. And you had 2 foundations, probably 2 meters square, 400 thick. There's 4 little stud columns, 300 by 300 by 500 high, with 4 holding down bolts, or 1 bolt in each column. And I set it out, put in 4 pegs. The charge hand took over, did the excavation, cast the foundations, cast the columns, and we left it. And then the steel erector arrived with his steel. Well, in fact, the day before the steel erector arrived, we checked the foundation and found, for some reason, I'd set it out 1 meter too short. Now, the foundation had been sitting there for about 2 weeks, and nobody had checked it after we'd cast it. And the day before the steel arrived on site, we picked up this problem. Now, we considered all options, and the big problem with galvanized steel is you can't modify it too easily. So we made the decision, break out the one foundation. So that day we started, broke it out. We worked late in the night, cast the foundation. Early in the next morning, we cast the 4 little stub columns, and the steel erector arrived on site, erected the steel. We had to temporarily support the one column because the concrete still hadn't cured. And then 3 weeks later, when the concrete was strong enough, we were able to take out the temporary supports. But a silly thing, just for getting one person to check the dimensions would have saved a hell of a lot of aggravation and overtime. Yeah, silly thing.
The last one is teamwork. You say construction site is like a soccer team. If all parts of the team are not working together, then you are not going to succeed without difficulty. Tell us more.
Well, we've just had 2 examples of a drawing clerk and a wages clerk. And both of those key people in a team, if they don't do their job, you get disruption on site. And construction site's difficult enough without unnecessary aggravation happening. And the same thing applies to your drivers, your storemen, your crane operators, your batch plant operators. Those are all key people on the site. And if we're not all working in conjunction with each other, then you're not going to succeed. We did a big job at a Rapa diamond mine in Botswana a few years ago, and we had challenges with one of the foremen. It was a joint venture, so we had to go through the normal integration process at the start of the job. Even with your own company, you go through a certain amount of learning curve, getting everybody to work together. But because it was a joint venture, we had the added problem that our joint venture partners had a different culture and a different way of doing things. So we had the one particular foreman who was very good, but he could not fit in. Everybody else understood that they needed to make concessions to make the joint venture a success, but this man could not and would not. And despite interventions from his own company's engineers and senior management, he continued to disrupt the site. And all the staff were staying in a big contractor's camp, and he would disrupt the camp as well. So eventually we had to have him removed from site as he caused more problems than he provided solutions for. So he lost out on a good cross-border allowance, and we had to start the whole process to get a new foreman onto site, go through the learning curve with his team, and it was completely unnecessary. So you can have a Madonna in your team, but if he can't play with the rest of the team, it's better to put him on the transfer list and find people that can work together, because you're really on a construction site, you don't want to be involved in petty little problems. There's work to be done.
Well, that's it. That concludes it. Thanks, Steve.